What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again with the Awesome Fantasy Football YouTube channel. We did our top 12 receivers. We are continuing through the top 24. This is video part 2. I am here with Nick Lepri to discuss it all with you. Nick, we had a great discussion with our part 1 video of the wide receiver ranks. We are unveiling part 2. How are you feeling about this?
Yeah, now the top 12 isn't necessarily cemented. It's not, it's not super chalk, but, you kind of know the top 12 guys. Here's when things really open up, and there's a lot of names you can throw into the top 24 that I won't argue with. So it's going to be very interesting to see where our consensus puts these players.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have some good discussion on these players. Before we get started, make sure to follow Nick. He's on Twitter at Notorious Fantasy. You can see it on the screen in front of you. I'm on Twitter at Matt_Gajewski. And we are brought to you today by Underdog Fantasy. If you've never heard of Underdog, they have all sorts of contests available to you guys. They have fantasy drafts, best ball drafts, pick'em contests, and they have a fantastic new contest they just unveiled, the Best Ball Millionaire Contest. And what this is, there is $1 million up top to first place. It is $25 to enter. Make sure to check out that contest. You are not going to find best ball contests with $1 million to first place. It is just downright ridiculous. And I can't wait to play these all throughout the off season. We also have a promo code for you guys where you can get some free money. If you use the promo code AWESOMO, you can get a match deposit bonus up to $100. Just some more ammo to enter that best ball tournament. Take your shot at $1 million. So make sure to check that out today. All right, Nick, we went through the top 12. We are doing number 13 all the way up to 24 today and having some good discussion along the way. You ready to get things started?
Yeah, let's get on into it here.
All right, so starting things out with receiver 13. And again, if you want to see our top 12, make sure to check back to yesterday's video where we did the top 12 receivers. We're going to kick things off with DJ Moore for Carolina, a player I so desperately wanted to rank inside the top 12. But man, that offense is rough. They were a team widely mocked quarterback in the top 10. They decided to avoid that. They do take a quarterback late on day 2, but I mean, I don't think we're going to expect any sort of improvement for that position, at least in the short term this year. That's what's keeping DJ Moore down for me. When we look at opportunity, it's there for DJ Moore. He was 6th in targets last year, 28% target share, 40% air yard share. His yards per route run, the efficiency metric we like to look at from Pro Football Focus, the predictive metric, it's been there throughout his career. But it did drop a little bit with quarterback play last year. They were also fairly run heavy, and I don't foresee that changing due to the structure of their offense. I just can't find a way to rank him any higher because of Sam Darnold being under center. Do you agree with this?
Yeah, the biggest issue with DJ Moore his whole career has been that he just cannot find the end zone. 2018, 2 touchdowns. 2019, 4. 2024, 2021, 4 touchdowns. And the reason why he can't find the end zone is not because he doesn't have a nose for the end zone, not because he's like allergic to scoring like Julio Jones. His biggest problem is that the quarterback position there, the whole time he's been there in Carolina, has been awful. I honestly hope that Matt Corral starts some games because I think that that would be at least a little bit more fun for DJ Moore, and maybe he's slightly better than Sam Darnold. DJ Moore is one of the more talented wide receivers in the NFL that is just being screwed completely by the fact that the quarterback position there is so bad. Even when Christian McCaffrey is healthy, though, the target share for DJ Moore is still there. He had his most targets in his career last year, and I think it continues to stay around that rate. He had 162 last season. I think it's similar this year. He's going to be able to crack 1,000 yards. He's cracked 1,000 yards 3 years in a row. The question is, will the touchdowns go up? Because if they do, he could definitely finish as a top 12 guy.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the volume's there for that consistent 1,000-yard season. It's just ceiling to me. Could he get 1,500 yards with the Darnold, Matt Corral quarterback combo? I don't know. Could he get 10 touchdowns? I don't know. I would love it, but overall, I do think it's the offense that's bringing him down. And make sure to check out our other video, but we had T. Higgins number 12. I think the ceiling for T. Higgins is just so much higher than Moore. Consistency, maybe not. And if there was better quarterback play, I think I'd comfortably have DJ Moore ahead of Higgins, but man, it's the offense overall. Any other concerns with this?
Yeah, just the biggest concerns the quarterback. Imagine how happy you would have been drafting DJ Moore if Deshaun Watson got traded there. Would have been so good.
I know, man. He was supposedly in play for that quarterback room in Carolina too, and they just missed. It goes Cleveland instead. And now we get to see Sam Darnold again. Man, it's 2022 and we have Sam Darnold trotting out at least at this point, if the season started today in the 2022 season, what a mess.
Yeah, it's terrible.
All right, let's move to receiver number 14. I think we both love Moore. We're just concerned with the situation. We can't say the same thing about wide receiver 14. That's Chris Godwin, maybe in the best situation for a receiver in the NFL. Again, Tampa Bay, they're extremely pass heavy. They were first in pass rate. They were first in pass rate at neutral game skips. They were third in tempo. Tom Brady's back. The only concern with Godwin is he's coming off the injury. And honestly, at this point, with modern medicine, ACL tears, they're not the biggest concern. For me, it's just, can Chris Godwin get in a full season because of when he tore the ACL? And right now, I think that'll happen. We'll have to monitor this throughout the offseason. But a full Godwin, full season with a healthy Godwin is going to be fantastic. He doesn't quite see the same targets as Mike Evans downfield, but that's kind of offset by seeing slightly more targets. His target share was at 21%. The guy's amazing from an efficiency perspective. He was at 1.97 yards per route run. That was 15th in the NFL last year. When he's healthy, he gives you everything you want. For me, it's just the injury. And I think if you're banking on a full season, Godwin's probably ranked in your top 12. What do you think?
Yeah. Now, banking on a full season for Chris Godwin's kind of difficult, though. At least in my book, he hasn't played a full season since 2018. Now, again, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to be able to tell you exactly why these things happen, but he has not been healthy throughout his career. He has not been able to play that full 16 games again since 2018. Chris Godwin is immensely talented. If he plays from week one on, the shock on my face when he's a top 5 guy would be very low. In my book, I think that he is actually maybe slightly more talented than Mike Evans, but Mike Evans is just such a big man that he just scores all the touchdowns. He's a great player as well. I don't want to just demean Mike Evans, but I do think that Chris Godwin is insanely talented as well. He ranked 4th in efficiency for catch rate. So the guy, when you throw the ball to him, he's going to catch that. The biggest issue in Chris Godwin's game is that he doesn't get the best target separation. He ranked 47th at the wide receiver position in that. But again, that's kind of just nitpicking, because even with ranking 47th in target separation, he still had over 1,000 receiving yards, 1,103, and he had 98 receptions. So I think that in 2022, yet again, we see a big year out of Chris Godwin, and I don't think that the coach switch up from Bruce Arians is going to do anything for this offense. Brady's going to still sling the ball, probably at the highest rate in the NFL.
Yeah, if not highest, probably top 3. And with Godwin, you're getting the efficiency. They're getting the high touchdown volume with this offense. Just really not much to dislike here. Let's move to wide receiver 15 in the consensus rankings. It is Jaylen Waddle, the counterpart to Tyreek Hill in Miami. Jaylen Waddle just played his rookie season. There are concerns. I mean, Tyreek Hill comes over. There's a lot of mouths to feed, so to speak, in Miami now. They bring in a new coaching staff. Mike McDaniel comes over from San Francisco, a traditionally run-heavy offense. But we know the way that San Francisco offense functions, they really prioritize players that can take the ball in space, yards after catch, and Waddle fits that bill. Last year, he had 141 targets. He was solid in yards per route run, 1.75. That crest, that sort of 1.7 rookie threshold we'd like to see. The target share was fine. The offense quietly is missing a lot of targets as well. They're missing 183. That's 30.5%. So seeing that number, I personally kind of believe that Waddle and Tyreek Hill can both operate and get theirs. Do you view this as an offense where they both can eat?
Yes, I definitely think they both could eat. Last year, Jaylen Waddle's numbers probably would have been better if Brian Flores actually let Tua play when he was healthy to come back. There was a lot of talk on Dolphins Twitter. I know this doesn't really matter in the scheme of things, about how Tua went golfing before that one game against Houston, because he was healthy. His thumb was fine, but Brian Flores didn't let him play. So Jaylen Waddle's numbers, I think, would have been a little bit better if Tua Tagovailoa played the whole season and did not get absolutely rocked in that Bills game, because the offensive line is a turnstile. I think Jaylen Waddle would have had a better season. I think he's going to have another great season, and I would expect him to finish inside of the top 15 last year. He was wide receiver 16.5 PPR, 21.5 PPR points per game, tied with CeeDee Lamb. The offense is going to get better. The biggest question mark with Jaylen Waddle is, how run heavy is this team going to become? Because if they do become super run heavy, then that hurts Waddle in my book a little bit more than would hurt Tyreek Hill.
I agree with you. That I think is the biggest concern, because last year they were 5th in pass rate in neutral game scripts, 10th in pass rate overall. So that brings a lot of target volume. If that regresses, is there enough for both Tyreek Hill and Waddle? And I love Tyreek Hill and Waddle as players, but I don't see any way that Jaylen Waddle eclipses Tyreek Hill in terms of talented target share in year 2. Perhaps later on in Tyreek's career, we could see this, but I don't think it's happening in 2022. And that's what kind of depresses him a little bit for us. He's still ranked pretty highly, though, wide receiver 15 overall. And I think this is about where he should come off the board. Any last words on Waddle?
Yeah, real quick, another thing that I typically just think about a little bit, this doesn't super affect my opinion on him, but the fact that the Dolphins defense is so good also hurts the amount that they're going to be throwing the ball later on in games.
We've seen that with the 49ers and McDaniel already. When they have solid defenses, just not as much opportunity for the offense. And that could be a concern in Miami. Wide receiver 16, it is Diontae Johnson from Pittsburgh. There's no Ben Roethlisberger anymore, and they draft Kenny Pickett in round 1. Think what you will of Kenny Pickett. I personally find it hard to believe that Diontae Johnson could play any worse with Kenny Pickett under center than he did with Ben Roethlisberger. And no indictment on Johnson. He's a good player. This is strictly the level of targets he was receiving, the caliber of targets he was receiving, I should say. With Johnson, the volume was there last year with Roethlisberger. He was 3rd in targets overall, 28.5% target share, 35% air yard share. It's just that those Ben Roethlisberger targets were so bad. In my opinion, they can't be worse with Pickett. I think the offense is still probably going to be pretty pass heavy. This is a strong division. They were 11th in neutral pass rate last year with Roethlisberger. That just blows my mind. They were 9th in plays per game, so the tempo is solid there. For me, with Diontae, it's just, does he have his ceiling? This is a slot receiver with a very low average depth of target. At the same time, that should give you some pretty bankable points, especially in PPR leagues. I don't think there's a ton of talent around him to really take away this wide receiver 1 job. They add George Pickens. Chase Claypool's a guy they've liked. They've soured on at various times and moved back and forth. Diontae, personally, for me, is a tough player to rank. What do you think of him here?
Yeah, I completely agree with the tough player to rank because in March, when I initially did a wide receiver rankings video, I had Diontae Johnson ranked as high as wide receiver number 10. Now I have him ranked as my wide receiver number, let's see here, 1 second, wide receiver number 13. So a little bit of a fall off. But the reason why I have him falling off slightly is because while the targets from Big Ben were not very good, is Kenny Pickett, is Mitchell Trubisky going to force feed the ball to Diontae Johnson? Diontae Johnson was getting 10.6 targets per game. He had 169 targets, number 2 wide receiver. If Kenny Pickett, if Mitch Trubisky, if the game plan is just to get Johnson the ball around 10 plus times a game, then Johnson's easily going to probably finish inside the top 10, right? He was number 9.5 PPR, number 9.5 PPR points per game, tied with names like Godwin, Stephon Diggs. So the guy is definitely talented. The question mark for me is, are they really going to, was it just Big Ben wanting to give him the ball, or was that really just the game plan from Mike Tomlin?
Yeah, that's the big concern I have. I think there is talent around Johnson that maybe suggests he doesn't receive that same volume. When you look at some of the efficiency metrics for a guy like Chase Claypool, he's not far behind Diontae Johnson in terms of yards per route run. When you look at George Pickens coming in, he profiles as a pure X receiver. They have some talent in Freiermuth at the tight end position, and Najee Harris is a capable pass catcher. So for me, I could see the targets dropping. Again, I don't think there's any room for them to be worse caliber targets, but I also don't think they're going to take a step forward with Trubisky or Pickett under center, whoever it may be. Ultimately, very difficult player to rank, and he's probably one of these players that could lose you your league or finish much higher than where we have him ranked. Any final words?
Yeah, that is almost the exact, like the perfect way to kind of sum up Diontae Johnson, where this guy could legitimately just be the same target share that he had last year and just dominate, or maybe Mitch Trubisky likes Pickens more. Maybe he likes Chase Claypool more. Maybe he just loves Pat Fryermouth and wants to throw the ball to him a million times. So that is just like the biggest concern here. And the only reason why I haven't ranked outside top 12.
Yeah, one last thing for me is, like, I think he's really dependent on the target volume. He's not a dynamic playmaker. He's not Jamar Chase. He's not Justin Jefferson. He's not winning downfield. He's kind of like a Keenan Allen of the AFC North. And I think that player needs targets. He's not creating on his own. He doesn't have that athleticism. Even coming out of Toledo, he didn't possess that. So I view him as a target-dependent prospect. But I guess any last words on that? Otherwise, we'll move on.
Yeah, 100%. It's all about the target. So if he does get the targets, though, he really could be top 5.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree with that. Wide receiver 17 for us in our consensus rankings is Michael Thomas. And I think this is the one we're going to have the biggest discrepancy on. You have Michael Thomas very high in your ranks. For
Yeah.
me, I have him much lower, and I think the issue is health. The issue is the offense. With Jameis Winston under center, they went extremely run heavy last year. They add Chris Olave. I just
Mhm.
don't know what this offense looks like. With Michael Thomas at peak Michael Thomas, though, he's wide receiver one, or at least he has that potential in the NFL. I guess the main question is, based on where you have him ranked, is what do you think the situation is going to look like? Obviously, you're viewing Thomas as a legit bona fide playmaker despite essentially taking 2 years off.
Yes, I still view him in that same light. And the argument that I just made for Diontae Johnson that we were just talking about is Mitch Trubisky, is Kenny Pickett going to be throwing the ball at the same high rate to Diontae Johnson as Big Ben did? The question now is Jameis going to throw the ball to Michael Thomas at that insanely high rate, just like Drew Brees did? And if you think no, then you should rank Michael Thomas significantly lower than I have ranked. I have ranked Michael Thomas as my wide receiver number 10, and I think that his ceiling could be the best wide receiver in fantasy football due to that high target share and due to what he does when he gets the football in his hands. A couple of years ago, this guy was a locked and loaded first round pick in fantasy football drafts. And you want to know who else was? Le'Veon Bell. So maybe that's not the greatest of arguments, but at the end of the day, this guy is in a similar situation in my book. I actually think Jameis Winston is pretty solid. I've probably said that about a bunch of quarterbacks in today's video and in the video we talked about yesterday with the wide receiver rankings, because there are a lot of wide receivers that get just discredited heavily, or quarterbacks that get discredited despite being pretty good in my book. I think Jameis Winston is one of those guys, and I think Michael Thomas can get it done. Now, you're definitely banking on him wanting to play. Like last year, it seemed like he was healthy. Was last year the year where he like went to practice and then just left?
He was like, if you remember back to 2020, I believe it was, he had the ankle injury that he tried to rehab. Then he didn't have surgery on in the offseason. He went to practice and it turns out it wasn't better. So then he had to actually have the surgery finally, and then he didn't play the entire year.
Yeah, okay. So maybe that's what I was thinking of. Yeah, Michael Thomas is a bit of a crazy guy. I don't know. Again, I'm just assuming that he's going to play the games. If he plays the games, he's going to be good. That's just my argument for him. He's just that good.
I have some concerns, and I had him wide receiver 27. So this, just full disclosure, this is the biggest gap we have between any player so far, at least near the top. For me, it's the added target competition. When Michael Thomas was wide receiver one, there was no receivers of consequence competing with him. Traquan Smith is not that guy. They bring in Chris Olave. They also have a different offense. They were much pass heavier under Breeze, and he was a guy that checked the ball a lot, checked the ball down a lot. They now move to Winston, and they're one of the run heaviest offenses in the NFL with a quarterback that pushes the ball downfield, which fits the skill set of Olave far more than it does Thomas. Then you have all the off-field injury, whatever you want to call it, character concerns with Thomas. I agree that I'm probably a little too low at wide receiver 27, but this is a guy that would be much closer to 24 than he would be number 12 for me. What do you think of those concerns?
I think everything that you listed off, there's reasons to be a little bit concerned, right? I don't think that Michael Thomas is locked and loaded to play 17 games. I don't know how Chris Olave is going to be used in year number one. It's definitely a completely different team. Sean Payton is not even the head coach of the team anymore, which is just weird to say at this point. It's just so different. I think Michael Thomas, though, if healthy, just to me, has to be ranked inside the top 12. Now, I understand your concerns. You don't have to draft him as the top 12 wide receiver, though. He's coming off the board much later than that. So if you're more in Matt's boat and you're thinking, oh, maybe he's wide receiver 24, then maybe you don't draft him at wide receiver 20 where he comes off the board, but you might feel a little bit more comfortable doing that.
To your point, and why I should probably bump him up a little bit, this guy has been elite every time he's played. He's only 29 years old, so he's not, he's getting up there in age, but he's certainly not at that cliff. His lowest yards per route run was 1.93, which would be top 20, top 15 range every single year. He had 4 seasons, 4 of his 5 above 2.0. 2.0 yards per route run in the NFL is that elite caliber. That's your A.J. Brown, your Devontae Adams, your Tyreek Hill territory. Michael Thomas was in that tier in 4 of his 5 seasons. In the 1 season, he did not reach that threshold. He was just below it and still inside the top 20. So Thomas, when healthy, an elite playmaker. Concerns are real. But, I mean, for a guy you might get outside the top 20 receivers, I don't think anybody has as high of a likelihood of potentially finishing in the top 5. I think we can say that. He's volatile, right?
Yes, extremely volatile. The upside is going to be there. And to me, I'm really sure that if he plays 15, 16 games, he's going to finish inside the top 10.
All right, Nick, you're talking me into Michael Thomas a little bit. I got talked into Michael Thomas last year by Lofty, and I lost a lot of money. So hopefully we don't have any of this random Michael Thomas sitting out. But let's move to wide receiver 18 in the consensus rankings. It's Terry McLaurin for the newly named Washington Commanders. Terry McLaurin has a lot of the same issues as a guy like Diontae Johnson. It's mainly going to be, what does the offense look like? What does quarterback play look like? Washington brings in Carson Wentz, who they probably viewed as an upgrade. I think everyone in the fantasy, the media community views him as a lateral move, if not worse. But when you look at the offense with Terry McLaurin, I think it's pretty clear he's still going to be the target leader. They had Jahan Dotson in the first round, but McLaurin still finished 14th in targets. He played a lot of the year banged up. He had a 42.5% air yard share, and he was still efficient. 1.81 yards per route run, was comfortably in the top 30. For me, it's just, does the offense pass a lot, and what do the attempts look like with Wentz under center? I think if we get a full season of McLaurin, he's comfortably in your top 18, and you're pretty content drafting him around this range.
Yeah, I would agree on that. I mean, Terry McLaurin to me is one of these guys that I'm just sick of drafting. I've drafted him so many years in a row. I've talked myself into him. I've talked about, oh man, look at this untapped potential. Look how good he looks on tape. Look at those routes. Look at this. Look at that. And then he gets on the field in September, and then you're like, oh shit, Taylor Heineke's his quarterback, or it's Carson Wentz. And then I start to be like, oh, why did I draft him this highly? I have him ranked at wide receiver 21. I think he could be a top 18 wide receiver. The skill set is there. It's another one of those, is he going to be seeing the correct opportunities that I've been trying to project on him for the last 2 years that he just has not seen? He looked really good his rookie year, and he's looked good both years. He had over 1,000 yards in 2021, 2020. I just don't know if he's ever going to put it all together to become this complete top 12 fantasy receiver.
Yeah, I see those concerns. I had him as wide receiver 15. Like, you and I are both poking holes in all the receivers at this point in the draft. It's kind of where we are. It's like the elite number one wide receiver potential that has a concern or two. And with McLaurin, it's certainly the offense and Carson Wentz. I think him as a player is fantastic. But like a Diontae Johnson, like a DJ Moore, he's kind of being held down because of that. And I'll highlight he's a guy that has been injured a lot. And sometimes he's played through it, sometimes he hasn't. But I like a full healthy season out of McLaurin in this range. Anything to add?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, this is a guy that on Player Profiler, they ranked dominator rating. He had a 26% dominator rating, 25th at wide receiver. So he's very good. He was winning his routes. He won 209 routes, 17th at wide receiver. So the guy's very good. He's very good. The biggest concern, again, is just Carson Wentz. It's the offense and what the run-pass split looks like. And just overall, like, this is a team. The Washington Commanders are a team. I wouldn't be surprised if they won 2 games. And I wouldn't be surprised if they came in second in the division.
Yeah, that division is volatile as can be. Let's move to wide receiver 19. Amari Cooper, newly of the Cleveland Browns. They kind of got him in a bargain after Dallas shot themselves in the foot with their salary cap situation, had to move on for him. So great signing for the Browns. I have a lot of questions about Cooper from a fantasy perspective. He's taken a large step back compared to the days where we even saw him for, at that time, Oakland, and then what we saw in Dallas. His yards per route run has declined in 3 straight years. His best season came in 2019. It was 2.29 yards per route run. That's elite territory. In 2020, it dropped to 1.81, and then 2021, it dropped to 1.63, which ranked 41st. The volume for Cooper has kind of always been there. He's never been in the elite Devontae Adams tier, but he's always kind of been sort of where like a T. Higgins, Jamar Chase sort of sit because he's played with a lot of other playmakers in the offense. He now moves from Dak Prescott, who I view as, at least a more sound quarterback situation than Cleveland. If you could guarantee me we were getting 16 games of Deshaun Watson, I think this would be a comfortable range for Cooper. But if we have to see Baker Mayfield for part of the year, or man, if they can't even get Baker on the field because of the current situation there, I don't know what kind of quarterback play you'd get and what targets would look like for Cooper. But I mean, that's a concern. So the Deshaun Watson situation already kind of brings him down for me. And then just the talent, like him dropping in yards per route run in 3 consecutive years. Is this it for Cooper? Is he past his prime at this point? Because I'm not sure.
I wouldn't say he's past his prime, but the situation here is very confusing. If I'm Baker Mayfield, there is no way I'm stepping foot on the field for the Cleveland Browns, if I'm being honest with you. I think they really kind of screwed him over. Now, Deshaun Watson's clearly significantly better than Baker Mayfield, but Baker took them to the playoffs. Baker was hurt all of last year, and then the NFL just threw him out. basically. Like, how is he not a starter? Like, how the fuck is Sam Darnold a starter in the NFL, but Baker Mayfield isn't? I digress. That's not the point of this video. Amari Cooper, I did a video 14 days ago on overrated fantasy football players, and Amari Cooper was one of those 5 players. He's coming off the board as wide receiver 20 based upon current ADP. I have him ranked at wide receiver number 19. This is the range in which I'm most confused about the wide receiver position, and I am not in love with any of these players. I like Amari Cooper's talent. I am just very concerned that Watson's suspension, if it is 8+ games, how good could Cooper possibly be with what is there? Like, Amari Cooper struggled last year with Dak Prescott. It could be a lot worse. So I'm pretty worried about Amari Cooper, if I'm being honest.
I am as well. Not to mention, the offense is run heavy and it's slow. Does that likely
Yeah.
change a little bit if Watson's under center? Yes, they probably
Mhm.
pass a little more. They probably run a few more plays. But I still don't think we're looking at an offense that looks anything like the Buccaneers or the Bills. So those are all concerns for me with Cooper
Yeah.
as well. Anything else to add? I think we said it all with Cooper.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people are going to really talk themselves up on Amari Cooper and rank him significantly higher than we did because of the hopes. Oh, now he's the clear number 1 receiver. They don't have any other options. Deshaun Watson's going to be back, and people are going to keep moving him up. Just stick him around wide receiver 20.
I've been doing that since Cooper came off the board in the top 5. I think those days are beyond. They're past now. But let's move to wide receiver 20. DK Metcalf for Seattle. I mean, you want to just repeat everything we said about the situation in Cleveland. With Seattle, it's probably worse. This team moves on from Russell Wilson. They ran the fewest plays in the NFL last year. Their pass rate is going to be pathetic with Drew Lock under center. There's Tyler Lockett to compete with. The efficiency is there for Metcalf. He's an amazing receiver. This has nothing to do with his talent. This is everything to do with Seattle probably being a bottom 3 offense in the NFL. I think I might not even rank him this high. And, we're talking about this on the fly. I have Metcalf ranked a little higher currently based on talent, but dude, the situation is so bad. Can you talk me into Metcalf?
No, I can't. I have him ranked lower than you do. He's my wide receiver 20, which is why I assume he's wide receiver 20 in these rankings.
Yeah, I have him at
I
19. So in the consensus, this is the way it works out.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. I was big on the full fade of Metcalf and Lockett last year. At points in the season, that was wrong, right? He does have his big games, but that's with Russell Wilson. Now he's got Drew Lock. I mean, maybe Baker shows up there, and I'll be pretty happy for DK Metcalf because I just don't think Lock has it. I don't think he's the
He
guy.
doesn't, dude. He doesn't.
I think that he's funny, right? When he's singing the song on the sideline, they're calling him Horsecock Drew Lock. That's all funny. I like calling him that. It's fun. But at the end of the day, this is very bad for DK Metcalf, and Metcalf struggled immensely. When Lockett goes off, Metcalf is basically sitting in the corner doing nothing, and vice versa. When Metcalf has the big game, Lockett's not doing anything, and that's very concerning. There's no they can't both play good. It's either one or the other, and it's very hard for me to project every single week in fantasy and DFS when to play these guys because it was so up in the air. And now it's even more confusing because they go from a quarterback that, again, I'm not going to tell you Russell Wilson's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, but some people might tell you that, right? Some people might think he's top 5. And now you have Drew Lock, who might be like bottom 35, right? He might not even be a top 32 quarterback in the NFL. So I'm very concerned about the situation. And like you said, he's probably going to keep falling down my rankings until Drew Lock does something crazy in training camp, and then I just get excited again.
Yeah, man. And you said it with Locke. The talent's not there to sustain 2 pass catchers. We saw that already with a pretty good pass catching core in Denver that Locke had that he wasn't able to utilize. But dude, it's the play volume too. Like these guys, you mentioned it, couldn't both produce last year with Russell Wilson. And I think a lot of that had to do with them being significantly below even the 31st team in terms of play rate overall. I don't see any way that increases. So Metcalf, he's risky, but this is a bet on talent situation. Man, this is a range I don't love either. I think you said it best, the most confusing range to rank so far. But let's go to 21. It is the aforementioned Jerry Jeudy. We have Russell Wilson moving on from Metcalf over to Denver where we get Jeudy. I think we just talk about the next 2 receivers in conjunction with each other. Just full disclosure, 22 is going to be Courtland Sutton. You have Courtland Sutton a little higher than Jeudy. I have Jeudy a little higher than Sutton. So I think this makes for some good discourse here. Can you talk to me about these 2 players and maybe lay out the case for Courtland Sutton being the better player to pick over Jerry Jeudy?
Yeah, so they are going in a very similar range of the draft. Right now, Courtland Sutton on underdog is going at pick 54.50, and Jerry Jeudy is coming off the board at pick 45. I've seen them in a lot of drafts go a little bit closer than that. That would be a 10 pick between them. I think by the time August rolls around, it's probably going to be a pick 'em in most people's head on who's going to end up being better. The reason why I think that Courtland Sutton is going to be a little bit better than Jerry Jeudy is because we have seen Courtland Sutton do it at the NFL level. He did it multiple seasons at the NFL level. He did it in 2019, 2018, and 2021. In my book, he played quite well, whereas Jerry Jeudy hasn't been the guy he was in college at the NFL level yet. Now, can he be 100%? So I'm not going to have this crazy argument, and we're not going to be like Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith and start fucking yelling at each other here that I really believe Courtland Sutton needs to be ranked ahead of Jerry Jeudy. I have him ranked ahead of Jerry Jeudy. I believe I have Courtland Sutton ranked a couple of rankings. So I have Courtland Sutton at 18, Jeudy at 23. So technically, based upon my rankings, maybe I should be yelling at you, but I don't feel like there's that much of a difference. I do believe that both of these guys are talented players, and it's really going to come down to what we see out of training camp in my book. Who's the guy that's more targeted by Russell Wilson in preseason? All these things. Who has the better connection? Maybe that's what really closes the deal here. Courtland Sutton only had 2 touchdowns last year. Jerry Jeudy had none. Those numbers are bound to increase with Russell Wilson. These are 2 excellent wide receivers. They're both very talented. So when I say that I think Courtland Sutton may be a little bit better, that doesn't mean that I think Jerry Judy's some scrub out there.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, we had Russell Wilson propping up both DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett last year. No, they didn't always produce at the same time. A lot of it because the play volume being so bad, but they both were solid, startable receivers every single week. And now Russell Wilson moves over to an offense in Denver, which is not going to play like Seattle. They have Nathaniel Hackett coming over. This is going to be more your Packers style offense. And Russell Wilson, I think maybe the talent's not quite as good as Lockett and Metcalf, but it's not much worse. And I think there's arguments for both these players. So I'm not going to yell at you either, Nick, but the case for Jeudy with me is when you look at the yards per route run, and again, he's been hurt. Last year, he played with a high ankle sprain, and he also missed a lot of games. So the sample size is not quite as large for Jeudy. But as a rookie, his yards per route run was 1.66. I like using 1.7 as that threshold for young players. So he's right there. And then this past year, it improves to 1.85 with an ankle sprain. If you want to compare this to a career trajectory, these are basically the same numbers as a young CeeDee Lamb, albeit on a much smaller sample size. Judy's essentially performing the same, at least caliber of plays on less routes, less targets. But when you look at Sutton, last year, Jeudy did have the higher yards per route run. Sutton's number fell to 1.43. That was 56th. But again, Sutton's another guy who had the injury. When you look back to 2019, before the injury, Sutton was elite. He was above 2.0 yards per route run, which again is that elite level receiver. So for me, I think if you're ranking Sutton higher, you're banking on him achieving that previous self that he's shown. With Jeudy, I think you're just banking on that sort of CD level career progression that he's already kind of displayed. But ultimately, it's probably somewhere in between. And I think that's why using consensus rankings like we have is going to be solid. You have Sutton a little higher. I have Jeudy a little higher. Consensus rankings, put them right next to each other. Anything else to add?
Yeah, I think honestly they should be ranked very close to each other because right now, where we're sitting right now, it's May, right? There's no huge gap between the two. And like I said, maybe by August we see some things. Maybe it's like, oh, Russell Wilson really is favoring Jeudy or he's really favoring Sutton. Then maybe you want to adjust. But based on everything we know right now, I don't think there should be a huge gap in between them.
Agreed. All right. Receiver 23 on our board is Mike Williams. We talked Keenan Allen in our previous show. You and I both agreed that we don't see any way that Mike Williams goes out there and eclipses Keenan Allen in terms of opportunity, in terms of talent, and overall the production that's put in the field. But Mike Williams still should be a very usable receiver in this elite offense overall. We already highlighted it, but the Chargers, they're top 5 in pass rate. They're top 5 in pass rate and neutral game scripts. They're top 5 in play volume. Justin Herbert is ascending, and he's already playing at a pretty solid level overall. Mike Williams, the efficiency is there for him. 1.97 yards per route run. That was 16th in the NFL, just shy of that 2.0 elite marker where we see the receivers like Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill. He's also used a little more downfield. So I like with Mike Williams, he has that like spiked weak potential. Maybe he doesn't have the security as a Keenan Allen, but he has the upside to give you 30 points on any given week. What do you think of Williams?
Yeah, Mike Williams has been a guy that I've been telling people to draft for years at this point. I really like Mike Williams, and he really didn't put it all together until last year. The seasons prior to that, he's like wide receiver 52 in points per game, 47, 40. Didn't really put it all together, but last year he really excelled. He's one of those guys that will do anything to get the football. I'm talking about this guy will take his leg off and go catch the football. He dives all around. He does all types of crazy shit that puts him in a very bad spot to potentially get hurt, but he always catches the ball. I like Mike Williams a ton. Last year, on a per game basis, this was probably one of the more frustrating players in fantasy football. Weeks 1 through 3, he scored over 20 plus fantasy points. And then week 4, he scores 2 points. And he scores 36 points. Then 4, 3, 7, 7, 20, 7, 16, 12, 7, 15, 26. That may have been a little hard to follow, but from weeks 1 through 3, he dominates. From weeks 6 through 10, he's basically useless. And then weeks 11 through 18, he's up in the air. So he was very up in the air last season. If he does find a little bit more consistency, though, this is a guy that could finish top 18. I just don't think top 12 because Keenan Allen really is the locked and loaded number one there.
I agree with you, and I honestly don't have too much to add. I think you're going to get a little more volatility with Williams like you saw last year, but you'll definitely take that volatility for the spike games he provides, for the touchdowns he provides. And this team didn't add any other receivers. So Williams, they're trotting out the same cast that we saw last year. I don't think too much is going to be different. Loaded division, plenty of shootouts on deck for Williams. But let's move to wide receiver 24. And we're going to talk about a couple names in this because the player that comes up in our consensus rankings is Marquise Brown. I had him a little higher. You had Michael Pittman higher, so I want to at least touch on the dichotomy between those two players. But I'll lay out the case for Marquise Brown first and foremost. He changes teams. He's reunited with Kyler Murray, whom he played with in college. I like Marquise Brown. He was 10th in targets last year, which might be a little more opportunity than people thought he received. But the Ravens, again, were a little pass heavier. He's been solid from a yards per route run perspective. He was at 1.83, 1.85, and last year he took a drop to 1.61, largely attributed to the increase in drops. Again, we know drops are not a sticky metric. So Marquise Brown's been performing at a fairly high rate. The Cardinals last year were 8th in tempo, 14th in neutral pass rate. A lot of that fell because Kyler Murray got injured. They were much higher in the beginning of the season. And DeAndre Hopkins has a suspension. So Marquise Brown's like right on this crest. I have him at 23. I believe you have him a little lower, but you have Pittman higher. Maybe you can lay out the case for Pittman over Marquise Brown because I see these guys really neck and neck.
Yeah. Now, the thing with Brown is, while I don't have him ranked inside the top 24, he's like wide receiver 26, right? It's not like it's a crazy drop off. The reason why I have Pittman ranked ahead of him is I just feel a little bit more confident with the situation in Indianapolis. I feel as though Michael Pittman all year long is locked in to the number one role in this offense. Sure, they have other names. They draft Alex Pierce. They have Paris Campbell, who can't stay healthy. They have these other names on offense that are guys. They are certainly players in the NFL, but they're not up to the caliber of Michael Pittman. And Michael Pittman last year showed a bunch of flashes of greatness. There was a stretch in the season from week 7 to 9 where he's scoring a shit ton of points, 20 points week 7, 30 points week 8, 17 points week 9 up against the Jets. He was pretty fragile, right? He has these great games. He has these down games. But I think now without Carson Wentz, when you insert Matt Ryan into this offense, who I believe is a significantly better quarterback than Carson Wentz, with the system that they use there, where they're not heavily relying on Michael Pittman because they have Jonathan Taylor. But if Pittman's targets increase, he saw 7.6 targets per game last year. If he's closer to 8, 9, there's reason to believe that Michael Pittman is being drastically underrated right now.
I dug into Pittman a little more after I saw you ranked him so highly, and I think there is legitimate upside for him in this offense. It's not just the move from Carson Wentz to Matt Ryan, which I do view as an upgrade. The targets were already solid, 17th in targets. And looking at the efficiency, Michael Pittman, he was at 1.95 yards per route run, just shy of that elite threshold with Carson Wentz under center. And again, this is a young player. He's very early in his career, and we often see these players take a step forward. Not to mention, Indianapolis is missing 154 targets. That's 30.5% of their targets from last year. And 106 of those came exclusively from the wide receiver position. There's opportunity available. Pittman was already seeing a lot of targets, but there's a chance he takes a step forward further. He's likely going to be the wide receiver 1 in this offense. And like you said, I view it as an ascending offense overall. So I like Pittman. I might end up ranking him ahead of Marquise Brown. I have this as just a slight tie really between them, with the edge going to Brown, but I could see it going either way. But that's the end of our top 24 wide receivers video. We did wide receivers 13 through 24 today. Anything else to add before we head out of here, Nick?
Yeah, something real quick on Michael Pittman. Also on routes run per team pass play, he was number 3. So he was basically in there every single time they were passing the ball. And then real quick, I'll just give my opinion on Hollywood Brown before we get out of here, because I don't think I said too much about him. I think that he is in an excellent situation in Arizona, much more pass accustomed than the Baltimore Ravens. The reason why apparently Hollywood Brown left was because he didn't like the scheme there. Probably wanted the ball more. Maybe you would have gotten the ball more if you didn't drop the ball a bunch of times in the end zone, but I digress. I think Hollywood Brown's a great player. I think for the first couple of weeks of the season without DeAndre Hopkins, this is a smash spot for him. The question is, how do things come back down to earth when DeAndre Hopkins comes back? Is it like a humongous fall off? Or is it maybe he's like 2 points worse per game? Or is it like some drastic fall off? And he's going to be one of those guys that if he plays well the first 4 games, I'm trading his ass straight off my team, because I think that DeAndre Hopkins will definitely affect him.
Yeah, that I think is a good strategy overall. But that'll do it for us today. Make sure to check out the first part of our top 24 wide receivers video. So we also did top 12 quarterbacks, running backs, and tight end will be coming down the pipeline very soon. He is Nick Lepri. You can follow him on Twitter at Notorious Fantasy. I am Matt Gajewski. You can follow me on Twitter at Matt_Gajewski. Let us know in the comment section what you think of these rankings, who you view as maybe being a little too high, being too low, and we'll make sure to get back to you. But thank you guys for watching. That'll do it for us today. Have a good day, and we'll see you again next time.